We have in the studio District 2 Supervisorial candidate Laura Hobbs. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
Can we call you Laura, or do you prefer Ms. Hobbs?
Well, you can call me Laura. I have a doctorate in microbiology, but most people who are in academics, they don't really require you to call them doctor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, doctor usually reserved for medical doctors.
Yeah, for an MD, right?
Yes, unless
Exactly.
you're a professor and I'm in your class or something.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do with your microbiology degree? Is it do you work in microbiology?
Well, I got my PhD about 10 years ago, and I went on to do a postdoctoral appointment. And then I started having children and decided that I wanted to stay at home, be with my young babies who needed me the most.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't worked in that field then?
Yeah, not since 2012.
But you've been raising children.
Yes.
What's your background? Where have you lived? What have you done?
Where have I lived? Well, I grew up in San Luis Obispo County, and that's about 3.5 hours south of the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway between San Francisco and LA. It's a coastal area.
In LA, they would call that Northern California.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, some people consider that the Bay Area. A lot of people online have been saying that I grew up in the Bay Area, which is completely
hardly
incorrect. Yeah. But yeah, I've lived a lot of different places, and I actually moved back to San Luis Obispo to be near family after finishing my postdoctoral research in Paris, France.
Have you ever run for political office before?
No.
What on earth would possess you to want to be on the Board of Supervisors?
Well, it is a difficult job. I think they take a lot of flack. However, I feel compelled as a citizen to take that position. Right now, we're in a position where we've had career politicians for a long time, being the only ones who are willing to step up. But I feel that patriots, ordinary moms and dads, citizens need to step up to the plate and do their civic duty and get involved in local government.
By your use of the phrase career politicians, I presume that you support term limits?
Yes, I do.
What do you want to get done if you make it onto the Board of Supervisors for District 2?
Well, there's a lot of things that I want to get done. I want to drain the local swamp. I want to make fair and accurate elections through hand counting at the precincts using paper poll books. I think that we need to look at the Zog Fire settlement distribution and see if that was done rightfully, and if not, correct the mistakes. We also need to have more local control over everything from the windmill project, which now the state is trying to force upon us once again, even though we've made ordinances against it. There's the acid canal debacle that happened. And I know the supervisors don't have direct jurisdiction, but we need to look into that and right the wrongs that happened during that time. And I'm speaking specifically of the 2022.
Sure. The dry up.
It
never should have been dry. And that canal drying out definitely damaged it.
Yeah. And it damaged a lot of people. A lot of people weren't able to live in their homes. They weren't able to rent out their homes. All the farmers that I've talked to, they had to sell off their cattle at really low prices. It was a great loss to the area.
All kinds of unforeseen circumstances, not just to people who pay for water to irrigate, but just from the leaching out from the canal that provided well water for lots of people.
Yeah, and some people found they had a dry well. They tried to dig one deeper, and they ran into bedrock, and then they had no other choice but to buy water or to move out.
That's a Bureau of Reclamation issue. That's the federal government. That's a long way from the Board of Supervisors. What would you do as a supervisor about that?
Well, we need to look at whether or not that was a rightful distribution of water. 18% is not rightful, especially when that wasn't even enough to for the mechanical distribution of the water.
Wouldn't have even made it
so that was
halfway down.
Basically the equivalent of a 0% distribution. Mm-hmm. So when the state tries to do things like that, we need to respond appropriately, file a lawsuit, stand up for the rights and the citizens here in Shasta County. And that's what I would do as a supervisor, is I would stand up for our local sovereignty and for the citizens of Shasta County.
Concerning the voting issue, you said that you would want a hand count. We've kind of been down that road, and the state derailed that idea.
Well, the state, they come up with laws. Whether or not they're constitutional is another issue. So the California Constitution has very strong plenary rights to the counties. And for your listeners who want to look up more, there's certain election codes that safeguard the county's right to determine their elections. 25201 is one of them. 19001 and 19003, I believe, are two that your listeners might be interested in. Basically, there are things that we can look into. Right now, what we have done is we got rid of the Dominion contract. However, we did not stipulate that here in Shasta County, we are going to hand count. And so a lot of times what you'll see is the local overrides the state. And in the case of federal elections, each state gets to determine how they conduct their elections, right? Mm-hmm. And the U.S. government cannot command all the states to do it uniformly. It's the same thing when you look at the counties versus the state of California. So the counties have authority, which is not being utilized at the moment, which we should utilize. And then if the state wants to retaliate against us, which they have so very often, it's up to them to file a lawsuit against us.
So you think that the county should go ahead with a hand count? And
absolutely.
Despite what the state has said? The Secretary of State's office would have the authority to just step in and muscle us out of that, wouldn't they?
We have to take it there and see what happens, because I believe that the counties have the ultimate authority, and I believe that is protected in the California Code.
What are the benefits of moving to a hand-counted election? Are they as accurate? How does that work?
Yeah, actually, it is the gold standard for accuracy is hand counting. So the way that they check the machine count is they do a 1% count to see whether or not it matches up. And so that is our gold standard for accuracy. But furthermore, it gives the citizens transparency, so they can actually sit there and observe with their own eyes and understand exactly what went on. With the computers and the machine voting, machine tally, you can't see what's happening inside that black box. You have to be a computer scientist, and even still, that's proprietary information. So even computer scientists and cyber guys, they don't know what's in that code. So this breaks it down to the level of the ordinary citizen. Most of your poll workers and election observers, they're the elderly. They're people that are not computer savvy, and they should be able to have a right, just as anyone else, to know that their election is being conducted fairly and accurately and transparently.
Well, what those machines are basically sophisticated abacus.
I wish that were true. We have to take it on faith. I don't think you can honestly say that because you haven't looked at the code, have you?
No, and I would understand.
It's proprietary, so no one's been able to look at the code and actually say that.
There are a lot of things we have to take on trust, because we can't be everywhere at the same time and look over everybody's shoulder. So we have to take some things on trust, don't we?
Elections is not one of them. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But the Constitution guarantees a secret ballot, so...
Yeah, but a secret ballot is a lot different than a voting machine, which nobody has any eyes into to see. So I support a secret ballot, but what you're talking about is completely different than having a voting machine and proprietary source data that nobody can examine.
So what do you think is going on inside that machine?
Well, I think it's something that's happening. It's definitely a coordinated, whatever it is, coordinated event, not just statewide, but also throughout the whole United States, because Jeffrey O'Donnell looked at the cast vote record data, and in every single state he saw the same pattern of fraud. So it's something that happens, and I've analyzed over 50 different contests here locally. I see that Mesa pattern of fraud as well. Not in every contest, but I would say in all but 5, and I analyzed over 50 different contests.
Now, what is that pattern? What
the Mesa pattern?
Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so we'll just think of it like this. In the beginning of the election, And CVR is kind of like an approximation of time. So in the beginning, you'll see a lot of variation because not that many votes have come in. So one more vote, and you've only had, say, 10 votes will make a big difference in the overall average. So you see a lot of variation in the average in the beginning, and then it settles out into a flat line. And that's because the population size, if you have tens of thousands of votes coming in, that average is going to change very little. It's one more vote out of 20,000 votes is not going to make much of a
percentages,
difference. Right? And the percentages. But what we're seeing in the Mesa pattern of fraud is that line, instead of settling into a flat line, continues to grow up until the very end of the election after tens of thousands of votes have been counted. And that's simply unnatural. It's a sign of computer manipulation.
Wouldn't it be a sign, perhaps, of some voters voting at the polls and some voters voting by mail?
Well, actually, I only analyzed the mail-in votes because those are the random votes. Those are turned into your mailbox at random by the postal delivery. They're filled out at random by the voter. They're returned at random, and the mailman returns them back to the ROV's office at random. So those are the most. You have to be looking at randomized data in order to make this type of assertion.
Now, I'm not a mathematician or a statistician, but I did see the testimony of the people who refuted these allegations, and it made more sense to me.
Which testimony is that?
Such as the registrar of voters out of Placer County, I believe. He had a pretty good presentation about it.
I am not familiar with that, but the only person that I know that actually tried to refute anything was in Mesa, Colorado. And there's a rebuttal to that on Jeffrey O'Donnell's website, which is magaraccoon.com.
But wasn't that all shot down in Mesa?
No, it wasn't shot down. It still stands. So if there's a statistician or a data person out there that would like to refute it, the only way you can refute data is with better data.
But I thought that the raccoon guy and those other folks who worked to try to disprove the election there, they didn't even talk to the elections department.
No, that's not true. They actually, and I've gotten the CVR records myself. It's an auditing record that comes directly from the ROV's office, and it's every electronic voting machine produces a cast vote record. So that's the data that they use. But anyways, we should move on to the local issues.
Why would our local elections department be interested in committing fraud in an election and changing the results? And if they did, why would they allow some politicians who oppose their agenda to get into office and others not?
Okay, well, just quickly before we move on, I found that there was election fraud, even in contests where, say, for instance, Patrick Jones, Chris Kellstrom, and Kevin Cray, they all had election fraud. They won despite the fraud against them. So even though there's that same pattern of fraud in their election, they were able to overwhelm the fraud and still win their seats.
Okay. Let's move on. I see you have copious notes here, and you want to talk about a lot of stuff. What other issues are on your mind, Laura Hobbs?
Okay. Thank you. Well, the main issues I feel like are the Zog fire, which we already mentioned, the acid canal. I think we need to enforce laws that are already on the books regarding homelessness. I think homelessness is a huge issue, but any politician that comes in here and tells you that they have the answer to homelessness is not being honest with you.
And none of them really have.
No.
Because there are many, many answers, as many answers as there are homeless people, really.
Right. But we do have laws on the books. We decided a long time ago that public camping was not okay for us here in this county. And in fact, these are pretty much ubiquitous across the state. We've decided a long time ago that, loitering and, drunken in public or, on drugs in public is not okay. We need to look at issues like parents wanting to take their children to the library, but not wanting to go walk through Skid Row in order to get there, having to watch where they step and make sure they don't step on any dirty needles.
So
we as citizens,
do you have the solution then?
Yeah, we as citizens have rights, and I want the people who need help to get help, and the people who are committed to getting clean and off drugs to have those programs available. But I think that we need to look at not just the needs of the homeless folks and the people down and out, but also the needs of the ordinary citizens, the taxpayer citizens who are paying for the public library and who deserve a right to be able to use it uninhibited.
Well, that sounds good, but what would you do about it?
Well, I want to know, I think there's questions that need to be answered. Why aren't our laws being enforced? And I don't blame the rank and file. I think that the rank and file are doing what they're told. I think we need to look into the hierarchy of that and look at the top and see why these laws are no longer being enforced. There's a lot of things that aren't being enforced these days, and people want to know why. No trespassing, that's not being enforced. Things like that. So we need to know, and a lot of this is a city issue, but, in the outskirts of town, it's also a county issue. So we need to look at this and find out answers.
The RPD writes a lot of citations and makes some arrests for, and they clear camps, and then those folks move somewhere else in town. The solution is elusive.
Yeah. What do you think the solution is?
I don't know, but I'm not running for office.
Yeah. I just think that the ordinary citizens need to be able to go about their day, like, for instance, go into their workplace without worrying about having to step over a person sleeping there and wondering whether or not they're going to get in safely. I have talked to a woman. She just stayed out in her car and she waited there until the homeless person got up. And then she went about her day and started her work, at whatever time that was. But we as citizens, we have certain rights as well that shouldn't be infringed upon by these by the homeless people.
I'm just not sure I see a solution in your presentation.
Well, Gavin Newsom, in San Francisco, when the Chinese government came to visit the CCP, he cleared the streets up pretty quickly. It only took a couple of days. So it's not something that is overwhelming or impossible.
Well, those people went somewhere.
Yeah, it was only temporary.
Yeah, it was temporary, but we still need to look at it like that. There are solutions, and we need to move forward with them.
We have very little time left, a minute and a half or so. So use it as you will.
Okay. Well, I'd like to encourage all the citizens out there to get involved locally. Right now, a lot of people are dissatisfied with the direction of this government at a national level. And I think the best way to do something about that is to get involved locally. Attend the Board of Supervisors meetings. We have a meeting today. It starts at 9 a.m. Everybody's welcome. Everyone gets 3 minutes to speak publicly at the podium. If you don't like what you're seeing, get up, stand up, and talk about it. And I encourage you to vote for me. I'm an ordinary citizen. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm doing this out of conviction of my heart and a passion for what's right and what's fair. And I think that we all need to start doing whatever we can within our own capacity to get involved in politics locally.
And do you have a website or someone can find more information?
Yes, absolutely. It's votelaurahobbs.com, LAURAHOBBS, votelaurahobbs.com. You can find, I go before the board quite often. There's archival video footage of that. I have a podcast. You can listen to all 8 episodes or 7 or 8 episodes. I have my campaign ads there, of course, and everything else you might need.
Laura Hobbs running for Shasta County Supervisor District 2. Thanks a lot for coming in today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.